Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Free Thought Forum. I'm your host, Brian Fields. Today is the 22nd of January, and with me I have a special guest host, Blair Scott, who used to be the communications director for American Atheists, and then the director of public outreach as well.
Yeah.
He spent many years with American Atheists and has retired this year, but he's in town, and I invited him to join me on the show, and hopefully we'll have a great show. Or we'll bore the crap out of you. Either way, we'll try to have some fun. In the news, I have the Satanists are planning they may have already done it at this point, but they planned a rally in support of Florida Governor Rick Scott. The reason why they were so excited about him is that he signed a bill that allows for the possibility of prayer in public schools. It's kind of...
This is exactly what we try to point out to Christians everywhere, that this is Pandora's box that they're playing with. You know, when they try to espouse, Christian prayer in public schools, they don't understand the dilemma that puts them in. It's like, okay, I'm glad you're a Southern Baptist, but what are you going to do when Johnny comes home and starts praying to the rosary because his teacher teaches them Catholic prayer?
Exactly.
Or when they come home and go, praise Allah, or they come home and go, Krishna, whatever they do. That's the problem that they run into. Or, when in Mobile, Alabama, we ran into that problem when they tried to put prayer in school, and the county passed this crazy rule that allowed it, and one of the teachers was a Wiccan. And when the students started going home and talking about how they were praying to the goddess every morning after the pledge, that stuff stopped quick.
Right.
Prayer ended like the next week. Yeah, it's Pandora's box. They don't understand what they're getting themselves into. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out. Really
Apparently, the first rally is scheduled for January 25th. I guess that's in 3 days. So it hasn't been held yet. But, like you said, and this happens with us all the time. We as an organization, Pennsylvania Nonbelievers, has taken on several circumstances where there's, arguably issues of mixing religion in the public square improperly. But when we see that, generally we say, okay, that's being done. Let's go ahead. Let's see if we can't get equal time for atheists.
Right.
Let's put our information in the public square. And 9 times out of 10, the reaction, rather than all of a sudden, is against people putting religious stuff in the public square.
Yeah, look. There's a negative stigma to atheism out there. Okay. Rightfully or wrongfully, that's a debate for another time. But there is a negative stigma out there. Why not use it to our advantage every once in a while? Well, and it has worked. If somebody says, okay, nativity scenes were the recent crave because we just passed through the holiday season. Somebody puts a nativity scene out there. It's like, okay, well, we can leave the nativity scene out all by itself. Or we can ask for equal access under the law.
Exactly.
And when we ask for equal access under the law, 90% of the time, they're like, no, we do not want an atheist winter solstice display. We don't want a menorah. We don't want a satanic whatever. We don't want a Islamic whatever. None of that stuff goes there. We're just going to eliminate all displays completely. And that's fine with us.
Yeah.
Granted, it was the negative stereotype. They got there for the wrong reason, but they did get to the right place. The right reason is either equal access or government neutrality. That's the correct approach to these issues. Government neutrality is key. As long as the government is neutral towards religious belief, then everybody, whether they are religious or non-religious, regardless of their religion, benefits. That's what religious freedom is.
Exactly. By the way, I want to remind everybody, this is a call-in show. The number will be up on your screen, I hope, in a moment here, but feel free to give a call in if you hear something that you want to agree, disagree, have a conversation about. We're open. Our phone lines are open, and please give us a call in. But along this same vein, in Central Florida, this came up in the last week or so, a young man by the name of Daniel Koster is the president of, let me see if I can pronounce this right, Wekiva Atheist and Secular Alliance at the Wekiva High School in Central Florida. And recently the school board was sued and then had given that group that sued them permission to hand out Bibles at the school. What they would do is they would set up a table in the middle of the school and allow essentially unmanned and allow students to come in and take Bibles and then move on. Now today I found out from Daniel that it actually wasn't unmanned. They had in violation of the policy. There were members from Christian groups out there handing out the Bibles and talking to students.
But the policy itself is in violation of court precedent.
Oh yeah.
The courts have ruled consistently on this. You can hand out Bibles across the street. I mean, they have consistently pushed these groups out of the schools and said, look, you want to hand out your Bibles, that is your religious freedom to do so.
Yeah.
But you have to do it across the street.
Exactly.
That's the ruling. It's been relatively consistent. There's a few court rulings that came before the courts decided, hey, actually, this is kind of crazy. But modern court rulings have been consistent on this. It's absolutely just ridiculous that these guys think they can get away with it. He's got a winnable case. He's going to win. Either the school's going to back down and prevent it from going to court.
Well, he's not going to court yet. You know what he's doing first? They're going to start handing out freedom from religion pamphlets.
Equal access under the law?
Exactly.
Go for it. I say go for it.
And they put out a call in the last week or so to have atheist groups donate, hand out materials, not just the pamphlets, but books and
yeah, absolutely.
I know some of our members sent some stuff down to them.
Awesome.
But so they're looking to do it. But remember, I said the policy was put out a table, put the materials on it, and then the students can take or ignore as they wish. But that's not what they did. So it's my understanding the atheists intend to obey the policy, but there's going to have to be a challenge to the district about other people not following the policy. So we'll follow up on that on a later show.
And I would advise them, if they're going to follow the policy where they do not man their table, which is what I recommend. I recommend that they do follow the policy. They should at a minimum have somebody in the area monitoring the table for theft.
Sure. And Daniel, actually, he's a student at the school, so I expect that he'll be keeping an eye on the table and seeing what's going on. So, and you know,
way to go, Daniel! Awesome job, man. Way to go.
Absolutely. And in actually a little closer to home, up in this is Mill Hall, Pennsylvania, or up in northern central Pennsylvania. An activist up there, Timothy Havener. He's actually a friend of our organization. He contacted us to let us know about a form that was sent home with his, I think it was middle schooler. In any case, there's a substitute teacher sent home a Good News Club advertisement that was handed out by the teachers.
Now, was it handed out by all teachers and distributed through the normal distribution process, or was it something that this teacher did on their own?
It's unclear at this time.
This process is kind of iffy,
yeah.
right? There's some legal gray area here with these. The way it works is you can send these flyers home with students if the school does not actually print them.
Right.
And they are distributed fairly and without bias,
right.
Which means tomorrow, if the KKK wants to hold a children's rally, they have every right to have the school distribute the flyers the way the Good News Club distributed theirs. The reason, what we normally tell people when they want to test this is to see if it's constitutional or not, is if they will allow the atheist groups or some other group to put stuff through.
The first test on this one, interestingly, has failed. And that is, the school district does have a clear written policy for handing out materials for third-party groups, and their policy specifically forbids it.
Well, then it's a policy issue. But as far as the legal issue goes, you know, the reason it's hard to test these legally is because most atheist groups don't have the funding to do vacation Bible schools or vacation non-Bible schools or whatever.
We want to do things like that for years. I wanted to set up a critical thinking course that was, you know, tangentially related.
But there is one thing you can do though. Look, if you have a Camp Quest in your area, okay, get the Camp Quest information and hand the school the pre-printed pamphlets, and again, make sure you follow the school's policy and test the system. See if they're willing to hand those materials out. If they are, then it's not a separation issue, it is a equal access issue.
Right.
If they're not, then it's a separation issue or a discrimination issue at a minimum.
Right.
There are ways to test it. Now, if this school has its own specific policy prohibiting this, then yeah, the teachers are in trouble.
Yeah, and so he told me last night he was going to be sending out a physical letter today for that, and he sent me a copy of the letter, and it's essentially saying, it's because of the fact that they have a policy, it's more of an informing letter, one that says, I don't know if you're aware of this, but your teacher did this and it violates your policy.
Right.
And we'll have more on that as that story develops. Had a bit of a glitch here.
Yeah, your pages have disappeared.
Yes, they have.
God has smited thee.
Just a quick reminder, the phone number's up on the screen if you want to call in. But meanwhile, I'm going to move on to the next story. One of the things that keeps coming up over and over again every time I interact with the public is that, atheists don't have charities, atheists don't get involved in public works and things like that. Well, the fact is, before I tell you about this story, atheists do get involved. More often than not, atheists get involved without having to trumpet the fact that they get involved with public works. Yeah. I mean, they don't generally feel that it's necessary to say, I went and donated with my church, or most atheists, they'll do work with the Red Cross, they'll do work, there's several foundations and strictly secular organizations out there.
There's no reason for us to brag about the charity we do because we're not looking for Jesus points.
Right. But while we're bragging about it,
and it should be pointed out, this isn't bragging. This is to put the idea to rest.
Yes.
To put the myth to rest.
Yes.
That atheists are non-charitable.
Exactly.
It is a myth, and it needs to be put to rest.
Exactly. There's an organization called the Foundation Beyond Belief. This organization was started actually in the last year or two. It was specifically started to combat this idea, to give atheists one place to donate money to when things come up like Hurricane Sandy and the Sandy Hook thing, and all of those things that come up that are tragedies or something where atheists want to get involved. This is a charity that is a clearinghouse for monetary donations to get them to the right people and not to a particular God's glorification. Right. Well, in any case, over the last 3 months, the Foundation Beyond Belief members, and when I say members, I mean people who are directly in the community, just giving out cash to people who need it, raised over $57,000 in just the last 3 months.
Awesome.
And they have a breakdown of all the, Hurricane Sandy, and there's two line. I mean, looking at the line items, there's grants, there's green projects, education, poverty and health, human rights.
And the Blair Scott's daughter's college fund is where?
No. Sorry, man. But but in any case, they do this organization's done a lot of fantastic work. Pennsylvania Non-Believers is actually a member of a subsidiary program called Volunteers Beyond Belief. That means that our members get together and go out to the community and work on things like food banks and charity projects as well. Other organizations are doing the same thing all over the country. So, like I said, this is a huge myth. It's one that it makes me cringe every time I hear it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's something that I'm glad to see that this project's off the ground and running and
I haven't checked it in a while, but before, when this myth would come up, you could always point to Kiva. Mm-hmm. Do you remember Kiva? Mm-hmm. Kiva was, you would assign yourself to a group, mm-hmm. and that group would go out of their way to collect money for the different charities and stuff that came up. And every week, every day, atheists and agnostics and non-believers were on top. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like just a couple of dollars above Christians or anybody else. It was significantly above. Yeah. The atheists tend to donate a lot of money. They just tend to donate it anonymously or to secular organizations, or they donate their time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've gone to food kitchens, and I've helped feed the homeless. We do the Adopt-A-Mile. I think almost everybody does the Adopt-A-Mile. We get involved in the community in ways that we see a direct impact, and we do it because it's the right thing to do. We're not
Right.
trying to get points to get into a heaven or to avoid going to hell. When you are good to avoid punishment or for the reward, you're not being good.
Exactly.
You're behaving because mommy said you can't have a cookie unless you do.
Right.
We do it because it's the right thing to do. We donate to Kiva, we donate to Foundation Beyond Belief because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. And it's just amazing. You know, when I was a Christian, you know, most people, when they talk about donating money to causes, they talk about donating directly to their church. The focus is on that 10% tithe or things like that. But the vast majority of monies that go into a church go into the upkeep of the church
Right.
and to the super organization that is in charge of the church. So if you've got a Methodist church, for example, it'll go to the Methodist conference. If you've got which, you know, more often than not goes to things like maintenance and overhead and starting up new churches.
Right.
And if you think that spreading Christianity is a good thing, and obviously we wouldn't agree with that idea, but if you think that's a good thing, you know, fine. But I don't think that is actual giving. Actual giving is getting out in the community and helping people who need it.
The last data that I saw on that, on the church budget and what percentage of tithe and donations above tithe went to actual charity was about 8%. And that was
Right.
consistent across the board, regardless of Methodist, Baptist, whoever.
Right.
That it was an average of 8%. When I go to give, and I hear this from most of my fellow atheists, obviously I can't speak for all of them, we have a tendency to look at an organization and decide, one, is it secular? Two, what is its administrative and overhead costs? If they're spending 95 cents to the dollar on admin,
Right.
we're not donating to that charity.
Right.
I refuse to donate to any organization that has over 30 cent per dollar overhead.
Right.
And I prefer to go even lower.
Right.
American Red Cross is good for that. American Atheist is good for that. Almost all the atheists or atheist
Oh yeah,
organizations are good
they
for
all will
keeping
run on
that
a
overhead low.
shoestring budget and volunteer time, and
You know your dollar is going to go where it's needed.
Right.
And to me, that's more important. I'm not going to donate to somebody who spends their money on frivolous stuff and admin and overhead. I want my money to go where it's needed in somebody's, you know, in food that's going to feed somebody, into clothing, into activism, litigation, whatever it needs to go to, whatever cause I'm donating to. That's important to atheists.
yes, absolutely. On my next story I have here, this is actually, I'm bringing this up, I found this online. This is a story about a motivational speaker who belongs to a group called Future Champions of America. And this isn't the only group like this. There are dozens of groups like this across the United States where they bring in some kind of sports figure that has some kind of religious background to come in. And what happens is they'll go to the church and they'll say, or they'll go to the school and they'll say, we want to bring in this speaker to talk about drugs and how drugs are bad. Or, you know, all the other various, you know, drinking and driving, suicide, things like that. We're gonna motivate your students to avoid those kind of issues. And when they come in, then they start talking. They start off with a normal talk. Then they'll start talking about Jesus, and then they'll invite them to some kind of after-school or off-campus Jesus activity.
Classic bait and switch.
It is, but here's the thing: your tax dollars are paying for it, because what happens is they pay these organizations to come in. So even if you're not upset about Christians coming in to talk to your students, remember it's the flavor of Christianity that you may or may not agree with, and then they're upselling other activities to get the students back involved. It's actually happening here in Pennsylvania as well. We had an anonymous tip about some issues in one of our areas. We're going to have some more details about that in our upcoming programs. But essentially, the same issue. What they're doing is they are bringing in this motivational speaker. They're talking about Jesus, but when they go to the school, they don't tell the school that it is about religion. What they do is they just say it's a motivational speaker. Then sometimes you will have a savvy school say, is there religious content to this program? Then they will say, well, yes, there may be. Then the school may buck that and say, well, we can't have the religious content. You'll have to keep that out of the program. But it takes a school that is savvy to spot what's going on and to stop it. And most schools, especially in rural areas, are not going to do it. And sometimes these programs are done kind of, I mean, it looks like they're doing it with a bit of a wink and a nod, where, you don't tell us it's religious, we can claim ignorance.
Right. That's really unfortunate. Look, if there's any school administrators listening to the sound of my voice right now, listen, do yourself a favor and don't get duped by this stuff. Mm-hmm. This organization is not going to be the subject of the lawsuit. You are, because you're the government entity that allowed it to take place. And ignorance is not excusable. How many times do you tell your students, ignorance of the rules doesn't mean you can beat up Johnny or take Sally's lunch money,
right,
or cuss in front of the teacher? Ignorance of the rules is irrelevant. It's also irrelevant for you as an adult. The law is the law is the law. You need to understand that, and you need to take care of the situation as you see fit. Don't get duped by these guys. Keep them out of your school and avoid the litigation. Your school board, your county, and anybody else who might get involved cannot afford these lawsuits. If you lose, you can't afford them. Your tax dollars need to go to better things. So let's just avoid that altogether and don't have the lawsuit and obey the law. It's that simple, really.
It's funny because this actually happened here in York too. I just remembered there was a district. We were watching the story. It actually was published in the local papers about a motivation. There wasn't motivation for that one. It was they were going to come in and work with the school to do volunteer programs with the students, and so they came in and. We had one of our members who knows one of the school board members and asked them about it. They said, oh, well, of course they wouldn't be doing religious stuff. I mean, that would be wrong. We know that's wrong, and they're not going to do that. Turns out that this official went and checked, because just in case, they thought, let me just double check that.
Right.
And it turns out, no, they were actually proselytizing to the kids. And so this official came back to our member and said, I can't believe they were doing that. I'm so sorry. We've told them not to do that, and they're not coming back. So a lot of times it's just, they don't, these school officials don't even know what's going on. Right. Sometimes they do, and it's unfortunate. But in this particular circumstance where I've got the numbers in front of me, this is what the local taxpayers paid for this. The speaker was hired at a cost of $650 per show. Now, for 20 performances total, which came out to nearly $12,000 in taxpayer money. Now, if you do the math there, you'll also find out that multiple performances happened at the same school. So it's
more than 12,000.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it was just 1,000, it's a complete waste of money. That 1,000 could have bought 2 brand new computers for the science lab.
When your school district is talking about not having money to do those things that you find important, whatever band programs, drama, those things where they're always cutting back on money, that $12,000 should be outrageous to everybody, because there is a place for religious speakers, and they call it a church. It's not your school. And as your student, anytime you get a religious group involved, there's no way to guarantee that your student is going to be hearing about the particular religion that you want them to be raised in. That's why it's left to the parent. It's the parent's role in their child's life to figure out, those type of moral questions and how they want to present it to their kids. And so it should be outrageous. We get a lot of flack when we get out, when we fight these things, when we take on these cases. We work a lot with organizations like American Atheists and the Freedom from Religion Foundation, who aren't afraid. Either organization is not afraid to sue districts that are not in compliance and refuse to get into compliance. There's a case right now out in Pittsburgh that the Freedom from Religion Foundation is taking on about a 10 Commandments monument. And I saw an update today that The school district had a motion to dismiss the case, essentially with the idea that they thought it didn't have merit, but it does. And the official word came back to the motion to dismiss was denied today. And so that case will be proceeding.
Awesome. That's a winnable case right there. That school even tried, to even get a dismissal.
Yeah.
Just blows my mind. That is bad counseling, is what that is. It's time to get a new lawyer, guys.
Yes.
It really is. That's bad counseling. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Either that or they hoping the judge was an idiot.
That I think it was probably more the latter. Well, they also part of the case. The reason why they went for the dismissal was there were a lot of John Does in the case, Jane Does and John Does, because the complainers were students in the district that didn't want to get fallback.
We've seen what happens when students don't do John Doe and Jane Doe. Jessica Alquist is a good example of what happens.
Absolutely.
To say that this should be dismissed because the students are afraid to come out.
Yeah.
Come on. You guys are administrators, you're teachers, you're supposed to be out, you're supposed to protect these children. Why would you do anything to put their name in public in a case? I just don't get it. It runs counter to everything that they have taught and been taught to do as professional teachers and educators.
Right.
It just blows my mind. Well, of course, the flip side of that too is a lot of the school boards are actually not teachers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They're Joe Schmo's mom who just happens to sit at home and be bored, or they're the Christian deacon who wants to get on the school board and push creationism. Very rarely are school boards composed of people they should be composed of.
Right. Yeah. You're professionals in the community that have some idea of wanting to do good by our children.
Yeah, elected school boards, I think, are a bad idea, but that's a topic for another day.
But the last bit of news I have on the crazy in crazy Christian news. Christian radio host Julie Roys thinks she's figured out finally how to win the culture wars. Christians just have to lose. Here's her logic.
Wait, what? I'm with her so far.
I agree with her. But here's the thing. It's her contention that the reason why Christians are losing the culture wars is because the people on the other side are being picked on too much, so people are sympathizing with them. So she figures that if Christians lose the culture wars, then Christians are automatically now on the side of being picked on and put upon, and thus will gain the sympathy and ultimately win the culture wars.
Yeah, I understand where she's coming from. I do. I see her logic, as flawed as it is. I see it. Especially when you think about historically, from the Christian perspective of, throwing them to the lions and, stuff like that. It's a persecution complex. That's really what it is. So it's like, okay, well, let's put ourselves back in persecution complex and maybe people will sympathize with us. Look, what's her name again?
Julie Roys.
Julie. If you're listening, and I know you're not, but if you are, look, persecution complex doesn't work, okay? Christianity didn't gain popularity because people felt sorry for Christians. Christianity gained popularity because Christians carried big swords. Okay, that's the way.
And was promoted by people carrying big swords.
Promoted by people I mean, you want to win the culture war. Here's an idea: grow up. Quit being children. Quit being whiny babies about it. Quit being bigoted. Quit being left over in the 17th frickin' century. Throw away your Bronze Age and Stone Age books and accept the modern world that you live in. There are plenty examples of Christians out there who have molded their religious faith to adjust to the modern world. It's ridiculous, this notion that the Ten Commandments and all the laws in the Old Testament and things that are in the New Testament written so long ago cannot be adjusted to our modern thinking and our modern world. This idea that you have to hate gays and all this kind of stuff is just absolute nonsense. Look, if religious morality was stagnant, then we would still be living in the frickin' Stone Age. Religion has molded and evolved. Yes, evolved over the eons. It has left frass behind as it has evolved. It has left ideas behind as it has evolved. And to stick to some of those old things is just, well, it's just asinine. There's no other way to put it.
If you look at the different religions throughout history, you can tell. If you erased the dates in which the religions were founded, and you listed them out, and you see the morality they espouse,
right,
and you laid it out, with a progression through history, which ones have which moral values, they line up. Just like fossils line up in the fossil record, they line up over history, and this is because religions learn just like individuals learn. Their morality adapts to modern culture, because if they don't adapt, just like any other living thing in the world, if they do not adapt to changing realities, they die. Yeah. So the religions that are alive today, the old religions that are alive today, generally accept modern conventions far easier than the younger ones. If you look at Islam compared to Christianity as a general whole, and Judaism, just taking those three, far and away the largest centrist groups in those particular religions are progressively more progressive the older they get. And every religion, of course, has their crazy backwater section of them. But if you talk about their centrist views, the Jewish centrist view is far more secular than the Christian centrist view, which is far more secular than the Islamic centrist view. Right. That even extends to certain more modern, if you break it out with the denominations and cults and so on and so forth. Look at the Mormon Church, a very, very young cult offshoot of Christianity, but they're also very, 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 very conservative and controlling of their members, and it takes years, hundreds of years, thousands of years for that control to eventually relax.
Right. Look, if you go through Old and New Testament and present some of the moral dilemmas that are in there, and take them out of the biblical equation, throw away the King James language, right? And put them in modern context and present them to most religious people. Most religious people go, well, no, I'd never do that. That's immoral.
Right.
Well, guess what? You are more moral than the God you follow.
Exactly.
You're more moral than the book that you pull your morality from. Because socially, you accept the moral tenets of our modern time under most circumstances. But this clinging to just a few key items, and homosexuality is the biggest one that I can think of at this point, is just ridiculous. Let go. Look, if you can let go of stoning women to death because they didn't cry out loud enough when they were raped, and therefore it's their fault. If you do not accept this idea that a rapist can pay a father 30 shekels and marry the rape victim, if you cannot accept this idea that an unruly child should be stoned to death, if you find those immoral actions, then you should also find the abomination of homosexuality equally immoral. They all come from the same place. They all come from the exact same place that you're pulling this stuff out of. And if one is immoral, then it's all immoral. It's all immoral. It's time to look at your book, and if you're embarrassed by anything that's in there, then it's time to reconsider and rethink your beliefs. It's time to move on.
Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, it's absolutely, getting back to the story, it's absolutely funny to me because, there's the additional helping of, with Christianity, you have this idea that I think many Christians get in their head that they're a minority, that they're put upon by society as a whole.
It's a persecution complex.
Yeah.
It's right back to it.
Yeah. So, until, you don't have 43 consecutive presidents, and until you don't have majorities in Congress, and the Supreme Court and nearly every walk of life,
Right.
I'm sorry, you don't have a right to have a persecution complex.
Yeah, when you can go to the yellow pages and look up church, and 300 pages later still be looking at churches, yeah, you don't have the right to a persecution complex. I'm sorry. When I can walk through Huntsville, Alabama, and damn near every street corner find a church, you have no right to have a persecution complex. When we start walking those streets and the churches are burned down and they're demolished because rioting heathens have destroyed them, I'll be on your side claiming that you are under persecution. Until then, sorry, you're the majority. Look, there's another, I don't know, I hate to violate Godwin's law, but there was another group of people who were in the majority who blamed the minority for their ills and decided that they were being persecuted. Well, we refer to them as Nazis. I'm not sure if you remember that part of history or not. So persecution complex is just a horrible way to think. It really is. It's a horrible way to think. Get your mind out of that. You're not being persecuted. Demanding that the government treat everybody equally is not persecution. It's not persecution because you can't espouse your ideas above everybody else's.
My daughter was, you remember the Chick-fil-A stuff last summer?
It was so funny.
Yeah, my daughter posted something on Facebook about Chick-fil-A saying that essentially, derogatory towards Chick-fil-A. And a bunch of her Christian friends accused her of being intolerant towards Christians. And, the fact is, intolerance toward intolerance is not itself bigotry. I'm sorry, that's wrong.
Look, I'm intolerant. I am intolerant of female genital mutilation. I am intolerant of killing women and putting them in burqas because they are killing them because they dared flash an ankle or go out into the street without a man.
Or get an education.
Or read a book. I am intolerant of, marrying 13-year-old girls in a freaking cult house in cult land, out there in Utah. I am intolerant of praying for your child instead of taking them to the hospital so that they die. Yeah, I'm intolerant. Absolutely, right. I'm intolerant.
Oh, absolutely.
And this idea that intolerance is bad? No, what we are intolerant of is bad. Why should I have to accept this nonsense? It's unethical, it's immoral, it's horrible behavior. It has no place in our modern society. It had no place in ancient society, but we just didn't know any better.
Right.
Now we know better.
Right.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's incredibly frustrating to see this stuff going on. And then for them to go, they're picking on us. Oh, come on. It's just so sickening, man. It really is. It's so sickening.
So I hear there's something coming up in the spring from American Atheists that might be interesting to our viewers.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing. Every year American Atheists has their annual convention. But what makes this convention special is that it's our 50th anniversary.
Awesome.
American Atheists is the oldest standing atheist organization in the United States. We've been around for 50 years. It's been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Austin, Texas is where it's going to be. Austin, Texas is where it started with Madeline Murray O'Hare way, way back. So
you
we're
guys
going to go
may
back
remember her, the whole idea of prayer in school actually being ruled a bad thing.
Right. Yeah, Madeline was a Spitfire, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we're going to go back to Austin. It's going to be our 50th anniversary. We rented out the entire hotel, so there's not going to be any competing conventions or groups there. You don't have to worry about, a big family reunion or a wedding. It's going to be all atheists. It's going to be a blast. It's within walking distance of 6th Street. It's right there on the river.
That's the downtown area of Austin where all the fun nightlife stuff happens.
6th Street is an absolute blast. It's a phenomenal place. And it's not just bars, it's restaurants. It's not just a place to get drunk. It's a place to hang out and have a good time. There's some amazing restaurants down there. Shout out to the Iron Cactus. I love that place.
I love Three Forks.
Three Forks, yeah, that's good. There's a lot of great restaurants down there. There's a lot of opportunities to enjoy yourself in Austin. Austin is a great town. We're excited about going back there. It's a huge event. Tons of speakers. AC Grayling is going to be there. JJ French, the guitarist from Twisted Sister is going
Right.
to be there. That's going to be amazing. I'm going to MC. I'm looking forward to that. You know, I'll hope to make you laugh in between speakers or really irritate you. Either way, I'm good.
He tends to do both simultaneously.
And this year, I'm not doing it in a capacity of as a staff member for American Atheists. I'm doing it. Dave asked me to MC. Dave, being Dave Silverman, president of American Atheists, asked me to MC even though I had resigned. And so I get to go in and MC as a stand-up comic. Stand-up comedy is something I do on the side. It's something that I'm pursuing now, and you know, a little more enthusiastically since I'm out of the movement. And then I get to open up for Keith Lowell Jensen on Comedy Night, and that's going to be an amazing time. I'm looking forward to it. Look, if you don't have your tickets, if you can't make it down there, you know, look, if you can only afford to go to one convention next year, or this year, I should say, this is the one you should go to. It's over Easter weekend, March 29th to 31st. Why? Because atheists have nothing better to do over Easter weekend. You know, just come down and have a good time with us. It's going to be a blast. Just go to atheist.org for more information. We'd love to see you there.
Yeah, I'm actually, I've already bought my tickets. I got my hotel room. My flight's booked, so I'm all set and ready to go.
You're bringing the good stuff, right?
We'll talk about that off the air. But yeah, I've been to every American Atheist conference since Atlanta. I don't remember what year that was.
Yeah, that was 5 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago.
I've been to every one since then, and I never fail to have a good time. It's always a blast. So.
Atlanta was the one that Alabama got its reputation from. Maybe it was the year prior, yeah. Alabama crew has a reputation to hold. Listen, if you've never hung out with the Alabama crew at the convention, I encourage you to find us. Here's the thing about conventions, right? Like, I love the speakers. I love going and watching the speakers. But the best part about conventions is hanging out with 1,300 to 1,500 atheists after the speakers.
Yeah, having a fantastic time.
And having an awesome time at night, partying and having a good time and just really getting to know each other. I love showing up and meeting all my old friends, making new friends.
It's like summer camp.
Yeah, better than summer camp. Better than summer camp. I walk away so enthusiastic and just... It's an amazing event. Like, if you haven't been to one, if you don't think you can afford to go to a national one, that's fine. Start off, see if you can find a state or local one to go to first to kind of get your feet wet.
State conferences.
Yeah, state conference.
We're going to be we're looking into right now a state conference in Philadelphia. We had one last year that was just fantastic. It blew away my personal expectations for it. I was really thrilled to and honored to be part of it. This year, I'm personally working with Margaret Downey to try to get another conference organized.
Yay, Margaret Downey.
Yeah, Margaret Downey rocks. And we're talking to Stax Rosh from Philly Core. And other people who Scott Rhodes, who is my co-chair for the Secular Coalition for Pennsylvania, and Carl Silverman, who's a member of our organization. We're all talking about the conference and trying to get things worked out. As the months go on, hopefully, I expect we'll be listing some big names. So stay tuned for that. And so if personally, I would encourage everybody to go to American Atheists and go to our conference. I understand that not everybody has the money to travel to Austin, and Philadelphia is a lot cheaper to go to. So if you can't make it down there, come to ours as well, or instead of.
And in both cases, look, do what you got to do to save the money. I mean, we all do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the conventions can get pricey. It's not just the tickets, it's the rooms, it's the travel, it's the gas. We get it. Not everybody has that money, we understand. But there are ways. I mean, for example, like the crew in Alabama that goes, we share rooms, we carpool.
Absolutely.
We split the gas, we split the cost of the rooms. We don't go to the dinners, some of us. We eat at McDonald's or save up all our money for a big dinner each night. We do what we got to do to have a good time and to get there.
And I'll tell you what, if you were a student, 9 times out of 10, these conferences have reduced rates for you, so definitely check that out.
But the student rates are ridiculous. I wish I was a student.
So if you have a student ID, definitely check that out for any conference you want to attend. But conferences, they're a lot of fun. Just being involved in the community and getting to talk to all these people you hear about. I was talking about, I mentioned activists, and these activists go to these conferences and they on a regular basis. So you get to talk to these people out here who are making a difference out in the community, and it's really exciting. And I guarantee you that when you hear them talk, you're going to want to go home. You're going to want to get involved. I mean, you can't not do it. I mean, there's just so much going on, and there's so much that needs to be done out in the community. And
it's a good time. It really is a good time. The student rate is so low. I was able to bring my daughter last year. And she came out as an atheist at the convention. It was one of my proudest moments as a dad. It was so great. And she had such a blast hanging out with everybody. I remember she left the room at like 10 o'clock because I was pretty tired. I emceed all day. And she's like, I'm going to go out. I'll be back in a little bit. A little bit was like 2 nights later. She, I have no idea who else. It was great. She had such a blast. She had such a great time enjoying and meeting everybody and hanging out with everybody. Now she's ready to go to the next one. She's been to some of the state and regionals. She loves them to death. And I think once you get to one and you realize how much fun they are, it's like a drug. You're instantly addicted. You want more.
By the way, I'm getting some information that our live feed might be a little choppy online. We do also put this show up on YouTube after the show as soon as we can, usually in a week or two, because there's lots of other stuff going on. But we do get it up on YouTube, so if you do miss parts of the show, you can catch it afterwards. But also keep in mind, if you're still listening to the show, we still have time if a caller wants to call in. The number's up on the screen. It's I can't read it from here. 717-846-5067, and we'd be glad to hear from you if you want to call in. We were talking about conferences. They are a lot of fun, and there's a lot of other activities. Pennsylvania non-believers, we're going to be getting into our tabling season as soon as the winter is done. It's really rather cold out there right now.
You guys live here. You should be tabling right now in 20-degree weather. Like if I could table in 40-degree weather, you can table in 20-degree weather. I'm just saying. Like it's so cold here, I decided to not shave because the hopes that just a little extra hair might keep me warm. It's ridiculous out there, dude. It's ridiculous.
Southerner.
It's crazy. My toes are still cold. It's going to take me a week in Key West to warm back up.
Yeah, well... I'm used to the weather up here. I kind of enjoy the colder weather, but we are going to get our tabling season come up soon, and when that comes up, we love to have people come out and visit. We'll be telling you a little bit more about that. Also, you should be aware that we are currently doing our 2013 membership drive. If you go out to our website, which is panonbelievers.org, you can download our membership form there and send it in. We'll be having our annual elections on the first Saturday in March at the Unitarian Universalist Church on South George Street. For any member. Now, our membership deadlines for participating in the elections is the end of this month. So in order to either run for the board of directors or to elect, to vote in the elections, you have to have your membership form in by the end of this month. But the form is available online. Download it and send it in. We love to have your support. We do a lot of work in the community. I mentioned the schools, school infringements. We have in following programs, I'll be telling you about some more school board prayer that's going on. We're one of the lucky few states where school board prayer has been tested. It's Pennsylvania, and 2 other states in the Virgin Islands. The 3rd District Court came down with a ruling that absolutely no school board prayer. It's not allowed whatsoever, not even non-sectarian. And we've been testing it. We've been going out and we've been looking at districts all over the state, finding ones that say on their agendas.
Right.
that they have an opening prayer. You know, there are atheists all over the state. We have friends everywhere, and they'll pop in on the districts and double check.
We are watching you. Yes.
So if you are a school board administrator or a principal or and you know that your district is doing this, you should be aware that this is flatly illegal. It went to the 3rd District Court. The 3rd District Court was the one that came down with the decision. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declined to review. And if you talk to your solicitor will tell you that that means that it is, in fact, the law of the land. There is no challenging it unless there is a significant difference in the facts of the case. Now, I'm not a lawyer myself, so you should consult with your solicitor, but I'm going to tell you that that's probably what he's going to tell you. And to challenge that is going to be a lot of money for your district, so don't do it. You know, serve your districts better than that. And we looked and we saw about 15 to 20 districts right now that we challenged 4 this year, and all 4 have either changed or altered their policies to be at least minimally compliant. We're going to be following up on a few of them to try to get them to edge them a little further back from the line. But
you know what slays me about this whole thing is it's a denial of pluralism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we had the prayer stuff come up in Mobile and other places, you know, we would go and we would talk to the principal or the superintendent or whatever, and they'd be like, well, the majority of our students are Christians. Like, I don't care if 100% of your students are Christians. That's irrelevant to the law. But while the majority may, in fact, be Christian, you know, that's, hello, persecution? How can that happen?
Right.
The reality is that you have a very pluralistic school. There are Hindu children, there are Buddhist children, there are Wiccan children, there are atheist children. You know, every religious demographic you can think of, there's probably at least one child in a larger school. Maybe not so in some of the smaller rural areas.
Right.
But within that school board, that school district, at a minimum, there's somebody out there from a different religion.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it for a second. If you're a Christian and you have this persecution complex, and you think that everybody's picking on your religion, now imagine what it feels like to be the Buddhist in the classroom.
Exactly.
You think you have persecution complex? Try actually being persecuted and being a Buddhist child in a classroom where every other student is Christian and giving that child static because they don't say under God when the pledge is on, or they don't pray before they eat, you know, at the lunchroom. You have no idea what persecution is. No idea.
Exactly right.
Look, I know we got a little bit of time, so I have personally been the victim of persecution. Let me tell you what persecution really looks like, okay, and my children. My daughter was surrounded in the school by students who began singing Jesus Loves You to her and refused to let her leave the circle they had made around her.
Mm-hmm.
That's persecution.
Right.
Okay? Several of those students were suspended over their behavior because we had a Jewish principal who got it. My tires have been slashed. My car has been bashed in with baseball bats. I've had a cross planted in my yard. I've had death threats, and I'm not talking just general death threats that we ignore from just normal crazy people. I'm talking genuine death threats that the FBI had to get involved with. It's just ridiculous the amount of stuff that goes on. And it's not because I'm out there burning churches down, and it's not because I'm out there, getting into fist fights with Christians. It's because I'm standing up for the Constitution and standing up for the religious freedom of everybody in this nation, regardless of their religious beliefs. And that makes me such a threat that I get 3,000 death threats on Facebook, on Fox News, because I said this doesn't belong somewhere. It's crazy, the stuff that happens out there. That is persecution.
It's what happens when you challenge the status quo. When
Exactly.
Look, it's been said before that when the status quo is wrong, the only way to be right is to challenge it. There's no way to avoid upsetting people when there is so much going wrong. Right. And so it's going to happen. People are going to react when you stand up for yourself. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about when you're talking about standing up for yourself.
Right. The civil rights movement saw it. The gay rights movement saw it. Every civil rights movement has seen the backlash that we've seen as atheist activists.
Mm-hmm.
You got to persevere and you got to keep going.
Yeah, but here's the thing: when you ask the question, when you say, why do you do what you do? Why does it matter that whether people are praying in school? Let me ask you, why is it so important that you pray and that the school institutionally prays? Why is it so important that it's a Christian prayer? Why is it so important that we not speak out and challenge this status quo? If it is important to you that Christianity is the religion of the land, that's something that you have to examine. That's not a question for us. We're challenging it. You're getting upset. You have to examine that for yourself and say, okay, wait a minute. If it's not important, if it's something that I'm asking the atheists not to care about, then I shouldn't care about it either. It shouldn't be a big deal to me. But if it's a big deal to me, then it's going to be a big deal to somebody else. It's going to be a big deal to not just atheists, but Hindu, Jew, Muslim, any of the variety of religions that are not the majority religion in the United States.
So the crazy thing about it is, and it's almost ironic, is that the reason we have so many fundamentalists in the United States, and the reason we have this freedom to espouse theocratic ideas is because we don't live in a theocracy.
Exactly.
Right? We have true freedom of religion, which means you're free to be any nut you want to be.
Right.
Right?
Just ask Fred Phelps.
Right. I mean, so you can espouse theocratic ideology because you live under religious freedom. The day you are successful in implementing your theocracy, that goes away. And whether or not you can espouse your ideas depends on who gets in charge.
Exactly. If you complain about a particular denomination or a particular sect of the Christian, if you say those people aren't Christians, you hear that all the time when you are a Christian, this particular sect, well, we can ignore them because they're not Christians. Remember, they have just as much possibility of being in charge of things as your particular religion does. Would you want that not Christian theology be the one that directs how your prayers are said or how your God is to be worshipped? If you look throughout history, those are questions that theocracies they get directly involved in. It's not a matter we have free speech in this country,
right.
But when religion controls law, then free speech goes away. Look at Iran, Iraq, you have the anti-blasphemy laws. Blasphemy is important. Blasphemy is the ability to criticize a religion, period. Anything that the religion does not consider gospel.
And that's not just atheist blasphemy.
Right.
Look at the whole Protestant movement.
Yes.
Look at Martin Luther.
Right.
That was blasphemy.
Exactly.
That was the whole point, is he lived under theocracy. He didn't like it anymore. He didn't like the fact that he couldn't speak out, that he couldn't come up with his own doctrine and his own interpretation. That's the whole point.
Yes.
Look at your own church and religious history. It is full of people blaspheming the standing theocracy because they disagreed with interpretations. So you have to decide at what point whose theocracy you're going to stand behind. Because if you're on the losing side, it's really going to suck for you.
Exactly. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's show. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. Our next show will be on Tuesday, February 12th at 6 o'clock here on Channel 16. Like I said, thank you, Blair, for joining me today.
Pleasure.
And we've had, I think, a great discussion. And next time we'll have more of the same. And I hope to see you there. And do you have any parting words or any more plugs you want to offer in the few seconds we have left?
Be reasonable to each other. It's the best way to go. Be nice.
Well, thank you, everybody, and have a good one, and have a good evening, and we'll see you in I guess that's 3 or 4 weeks. 3 weeks, I think. All right. Good night, everyone.
Stay warm.